Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's DIH Talk. My name is Santiago Uribe Diaz. I am a digital transformation advisor at Lux Innovation. For those of you who are new to these talks, there is a discussion button where we encourage you to send message and interact during the session. And there is also a questions button where you can post all the questions that you have for the speakers throughout the session. At the end of the session, there will be a Q&A where we will go through all your questions with the speakers. Today's topic is closing the gap, actionable steps for women's skills in industrial careers. So this is a very interesting topic. Today, in the IT sector, there is a big disparity between how many men and how many women work in this industry. There's a lot more men. So to fight this trend, there are different associations, different things. Today, we will have testimonials from Women for Cyber, and they will explain you very interesting strategies to fight against this issue. And now I would like to talk to you about the DIH and the services we offer. So the Digital Innovation Hub, I'm sorry, I'm seeing in the chat, people is asking about the sound. You can confirm that the sound is working before we move forward. Okay, brilliant, thank you. So the Digital Innovation Hub. Our aim is to digitalize the SMEs in Luxembourg. So we do it in different ways. We have assessments. The assessments are questionnaires that you can fill online or with our help in your company. And the purpose of this questionnaire is to help you find out what are the gaps in your digitalization, in which areas you need to focus. Should you invest more in cybersecurity, maybe an ERP, automation, and so on? You can discover this through the assessments. Then we have cybersecurity. Here we work very closely with our colleagues from the Luxembourg House of Cybersecurity. They also have an assessment which is oriented into telling you how good or how bad is the cybersecurity in your company. And then you can do a workshop with them in which they show you the results of this report and tell you concrete strategies on how to improve your cybersecurity. They also have the Room 42. This is a very interesting opportunity. So this is a simulation room in the Luxembourg House of Cybersecurity. You can go there with the staff of your company and simulate a real cyber attack with the data of your company. So this is an excellent opportunity to prepare yourself in a very interactive way and be ready when you will have a cybersecurity attack in the future. Hopefully not, but we see that this happens more and more. Then in skills and training, we work closely with the University of Luxembourg. So they can help you build a roadmap of trainings for your company. They do an analysis of what are the training wishes of your staff and what do you need as skills in your company. They do a match, and with this information, they can help you build a roadmap of trainings for you. Technology tests, we work with the LIST, the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology. They have hands-on technology workshops. So these are workshops in which they explain different technology topics in a very interactive way, because each participant has a computer in the LIST and they can practice straight away what the instructor is explaining them and work together in a very interactive way. The next workshop is about digital twins. It's in April 28th and the registration is open. So if you're interested, do not hesitate to register for that workshop. And there is also the Test Before Invest program. So here, let's imagine you as a company, you want to invest in an ERP or in a big digital solution. This represents a big amount of money and you're not sure of if it's really the good solution for you. You can do a test before invest with the LIST, and they can test data with you together with this tool. And then you can have a fundamental decision. You can see if it actually works for you or if it's not what you expected. And finally, we also work in awareness on funding. So these are webinars like the one we're having today, both completely oriented into explaining you what are the different aids, the different helps that the Luxembourg government gives to SMEs in terms of funding. And now, before introducing you to the speakers, I want to ask you for your help. We're currently trying to find out what is the preferred language in these DIH talks. If you want to vote, it will help us a lot and it's very easy. You just need to scan the QR that you are seeing in the screen and answer just one question. You would like these talks to be in English, French, or German. What's your preference? So I will leave this for a few seconds so you can vote, and then I'll present you our speakers. Thank you. So today, please help me welcoming our speakers of the day. We have Patricia Souza. She is president at Women for Cyber, and she works as a project officer in Unidot.lu. And we have Chloe Camus. She is vice president also in Women for Cyber, and she works at compliance in the Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank. So, welcome, Patricia and Chloe. A pleasure to have you here.
Hello, hello everybody.
Hello, welcome. Happy to be here as well.
So let me switch the presentations. Okay, thank you, Chloe and Patricia. The floor is all yours.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Santiago. So, hello everyone. First of all, good morning. I guess that everybody who is talking to us today is based in Luxembourg. Otherwise, can be good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you are in the world. It's always the nice part of connecting online. And thank you to all of you that are joining us today and taking the time to listen to us. But before we start, can you all hear me well? Hey, Savika. Yeah, I think you can.
Good
I
morning, Sabika.
Yes, good morning. I would like to frame this conversation a bit differently with a question to you all. And unfortunately, because I didn't check the interactivity before, we have to go in the old school style, which is basically using the chat box. So, how many of you are currently struggling to find or attract women and talent in your organization? So, just send a yes or a thumbs up so that we can more or less know what are your struggles. Thank you, Laurence. Laurence. Okay, so let's move to the next. I need to remember that I need to move here, right? In the presentation, me learning how to use the InWink. Now, good. So thank you to all of you who confirmed. Yeah, it's a common problem to all of you. And this is precisely the challenge we're also seeing across the industry. And it's not just specifically focusing on cybersecurity. This is across several sectors. But what is very important is that this is not a diversity discussion that we want to have today, but a workforce and competitiveness issue, right? I mean, we're talking about talents and we're talking about attracting women. So we're talking about money in the end of the day and businesses. And why we're then here today. So we know that the gender imbalance and the pay disparity in cybersecurity is a global challenge, not focusing now on cybersecurity in several other aspects. We can talk about finance, we can talk about mining, we can talk about science. And the thing is, Luxembourg is no exception. So we know that women comprise nearly half of the global workforce. So we're talking about 42% according to the most recent data. but they are only 25% of cybersecurity professionals worldwide. And it's not any different in the other STEM fields. So this underrepresentation is even more pronounced when we climb the ladder. So when we go to leadership roles, and we can even have figures like 17% of women that are chief information security officers, and the positions that hold this position among Fortune 500 companies. So we can just confirm that this is a business issue, right? What I would like to challenge, and I will start with this challenge right now. Chloe and I, we don't believe this is a talent issue only or a recruitment issue. We're truly facing a growing shortage of technical and operational talent. Or, that's the question, are we using inadequate hiring processes and promotion processes to reach each and every talent that we have in the field? Because what is contradictory, if we're talking or we're saying that half of the potential workforce of women still remains underrepresented, there is a gap. So the question is where this lies. And so the question is, sorry, it's because I checked the chat bot at the same time, and that's why you see me looking at so many places. So the question is not exactly or only why this matters, but how we can actually work to fix this issue, and then to have a flourishing market and economy. So if I ask to you, and feel free to chat, we're going to continue the discussion, but it's also nice for us to understand what are your struggles. In your organizations today, where do you see the biggest issue? Where do you face the biggest issues? It's in the hiring part, it's in the skills, so the shortage on the skills, or it's in the retention of those professionals? And I will move to the next slide, but I would like very much to hear some of you sharing. So let's go. And good morning, Karine. I know you too. Hi, Karine. So what we are proposing to you today, and please, I very much like to have discussions and not, of course, here it's more my voice and Chloe's, but please use the chat to have this interaction with us, because in the end of the day, this is for all of you. So the knowledge we have to share, it's only helpful if it's meeting your own expectations. So the proposition we have for today is that we're going to tackle, and this should not be so new to many of you, but what is the real problem? So why the gender gap still persists? What's not working today, and why is not working today? And what does it work? So from skills to careers, and what is your role? So we would like to leave you all with some actions, some challenges, what you can change starting tomorrow in your own organizations. Retention and hiring the right talent. Good, good. Thank you, Wendy or Vendy. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing it properly. So that's our proposition. If any of you have any other interests that we can cover within this presentation, please feel free to put in the chat. We're going to try to cover. And then with no further ado, so why are we, me and Chloe, here today talking about this this topic, right? So a bit about myself, as Santiago already mentioned, I'm the president of Women for Cyber since February. Sadika, who is our lovely guest here, she was the president for the past 4 years, and I'm extremely inspired by the work she has been doing. But I have multiple hats. I'm also the co-founder of Geek Girls, which is an organization that focuses in STEM education for girls under 18. I'm also the president of Optimist, which is another organization that works with professional women, supporting women in vulnerable conditions. I do work for the University of Luxembourg as well, not on my free time, in my full time. All the other aspects is what I do in my free time. And I am a career changer myself. So I was a tax advisor for almost 9 years at Ernst & Young. So I'm originally Brazilian. I was expatriated from Brazil to Germany. And from Germany, I then came to Luxembourg. And after 8-9 years as a tax advisor, that's when I transitioned to consulting. I started working with business and tech projects. And from seeing the gap in finance, I started seeing the gap in STEM. That's why my engagement. So my invitation to all of you is also to think that many of your talents, or where you're facing hiring problems, you can have the talents in your own organizations. They may just need the push to kind of be a career changer. For example, we know that many of our cybersecurity women, they are career changers. So another food for thought. And with that, I will let the floor to my brilliant Vice President, Chloe.
Thank you so much, Patricia, and hello, everybody. So my name is Chloé Camus, and I'm a proud Vice President of Women for Cyber in Luxembourg since the end of February. So it's quite new, and like Patricia, I have several hats. So I am also a legal and compliance manager at a Japanese bank called Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank Luxembourg. And what I've seen since I started my career in the legal and compliance world, I saw the impact of the Chief Information Security Officer, and ICT regulations has increased exponentially. That's why I was introduced to the world of cyber, and also to Women for Cyber Luxembourg, which I will introduce quite briefly. So if we move on to the next slide, I don't know if you can see it yet. Yes. So this is a short introduction on who is Women for Cyber, and later during the presentation we'll explain a little bit more what we do and what are our projects at the moment. But Women for Cyber in Luxembourg is actually one of the chapters of Women for Cyber Foundation. We have across 30 chapters in Europe. And so the focus of Women for Cyber is very simple. It is to connect women to real career opportunities in areas where the industry needs women. So it looks like very simple focus, but it's actually quite a big task. And so before we dive deeper into the presentation and what we will explain, like presenting to you datas and career skill ways, I'd like to ask you if you've been struggling recently to finding the right talent. I think Patricia started introducing the topic, but we would like to understand if that's still difficult for you. Please do not hesitate to comment in the chat. We'll reply maybe a bit later, and I'll start presenting to you the gender gap challenge. So as Patricia introduced, women represent nearly half of the global workforce, but unfortunately, they represent only 26 to 28% of the tech workforce in the world. So there's quite a huge gap. The data, in my view, is pretty scary, right? As you can see on the right, I found this data is eye-opening. The current pace of change will take 122 years until the economic gender gap is closed. That's pretty scary, I think. And it's not just a challenge, but a huge loss of opportunity at a worldwide stage. So the question is not when shall we close this gap, but how shall we close this gap? Because it's not only about a diversity and inclusion challenge, but it's a loss of talent, a loss of innovation, a loss of advantage, and also a loss of growth in our economies. Recently, so we found in a recent report from EIGA that improving gender equality could increase the GDP in the EU by 10%. So it's quite massive, I would say. And so if we move on to the next slide, you will see that we also try to focus not only on the cyber sphere, but also on the industry. And as you can see on the right, the huge figure, actually, only around 13% of female employment in the industry in the European Union was reported in 2023. So we found this data in the World Bank reports. And so we can see that the industrial sector is facing critical talent shortages. So what do we mean by the industry sector? We mean actually mining, manufacturing, construction, and public utilities. So it's quite a large scale. Despite this large scale, only 13% of women are employed in such industries. So an interesting fact is that only 3 days ago, there was a new initiative called the International Day of Women in Industry. And during this International Day, that was powered by the United Nations, and the meeting was in Vienna, in Austria, they reported that only 5 to 10% of CEOs in private companies have a leadership roles. So like Patricia introduced, the higher the hierarchy, the less the woman. And to me, it's quite striking that in 2026, women are still not, they are unrepresented in leadership roles. So as you can see, we need to develop some skills, develop the visibility of women, but not only for services, but only in the industry sectors. And because roles are now evolving in the industry sectors, people need not to be technicians, but also have some digital skills and now cybersecurity skills. And let's also talk about AI that is coming into play. And we were discussing this morning with Patricia about the AI adoption gap between men and women. So women are adopting AI way less than men. Why so, would you think? Because according to a woman, using AI is like cheating. Like, oof, I'm asking for external help, meaning I can't do it myself. This is a woman's mind, and it shows again that women are significantly unrepresented. I don't know what you think about that, but where are female leaders, would you think? So we'll try later during the presentation to give some tips to develop women skills. And I will leave the floor to Patricia now.
Thank you, Chloe. I was just trying to see if I could find some of the recent articles on the AI adoption gap. But as a context, there is a very big study that has been conducted by Harvard. I think 140,000 individuals, and women are adopting AI at a lower pace of 25% in comparison to men. And exactly as Chloe said, one of the reasons is because we feel that we're cheating. So, and here's the contradiction. So that's a good point to start with. We know that many initiatives exist, right? And we hear that all of the time. So things like it's a very good timing to be a woman because now women are getting positions, or why so many initiatives are only focusing on women. What the way I always challenge back, let's say, this sort of comments, is the fact that we still have a gap. So if there are so many initiatives, if it's so good to be women, why we only have less than 1/3 of the women being represented in the organization? So the gap still persists. And one of the things I mentioned in the beginning, my challenge to you was about hiring or retention, right? Where is exactly the issue? One of the main challenges we also see in the STEM fields, also cybersecurity, especially, but also in other sectors. And of course, the work of Lux Innovation, L-DIH, is much broader, is an industry. Chloe and myself, as representatives of Women for Cyber, we are giving a more focus on cyber. But many of the stats and the data that we're bringing here, they are cross industry and sectors. For example, that women are leaving mid-career. So we know, for example, that women are graduating for in the ICT fields, around 30% are women. They have normally higher grades than men. And in the other sectors, more women are even graduating than men. However, when they are reaching 30 to 35 years, they're leaving the sector. And there is a reason for that. You can call it the glass ceiling or the broken rung. There are several studies around. The question is the impact that we're creating. So if we have so many initiatives, why the gap still persists? So indeed, we're doing more. That's undeniable, but we're not achieving the outcome or the KPIs in the same pace that we expected. And the challenge or the question I have for you, so many of you already shared that you have retention and hiring the talents, but if you could say, what is between the two of them the most difficult challenge you have been facing? Is it on the hiring or the retention? Can you differentiate those two? So feel free to comment on the chat. And I will move forward with the next slide. So one of the reasons, so we were discussing about the bigger overview of the data, right? Where do we stand? Now we are narrowing down to the problems. So we know, and there is plenty of data. One of the initiatives I'm part of is the Women in Digital community. We are a group of experts. We're tackling the data and the gap challenge in the STEM and ICT fields. And we know from the data that the interest in the STEM fields, they drop in the girls between the ages from 11 to 15 more than every year. So the curiosity in the early age stages is similar throughout the ages, and they start dropping as the girls or the minorities, they get older. One of the reasons for that is the limited exposure to industrial careers and environments. The girls, this population, they don't know they are also entitled to work in these fields. And then you have the biases, right, of the teachers, and you have the biases of even the parents or the guardians. So the education pathways, they are disconnected from the industry needs. And here in the interest in the STEMs dropping and the limited exposure, I invite you all to take a look at a project called The Dream Gap from Mattel. And I'm very happy to share. It's a very impactful video from little girls of between 3 and 5, sharing the stats and saying, how am I going to believe that I'm going to be an astronaut if it's more likely that my parents are going to search, is my son gifted and is my daughter gifted? And there are several stats around that. So the Dream Gap is a project from Mattel that studied the exactly dream gap, the dream that girls would like to have or who they would like to be, and the gap they have between what they end up being in the end of the day, and why this happens. On the education pathways being disconnected, working at the university and having a full background in corporate world, I can pretty much tell you sometimes the academia is very far from what the industry needs. We need to bridge this gap. We need to bring them together. And we are very happy and proud at the Women for Cyber to have representatives within the University of Luxembourg and to work with them very closely to bring every day the challenges the industry face towards the academia to close to bring this together. One of the other problems we have is that we have few visible female role models in technical and operational roles. We know that this is one of the main issues to attract diverse pipelines and candidates. For example, if I don't see myself in the C-level, if I don't see people like me, there is it's very unlikely that I will apply for a position at a company, or that I will believe one day I'll have the chance to reach this point. That's also why we know that, for example, initiatives such as Women for Cyber and having programs that are only for girls only or minorities only, they tend to be more successful because we create a safer environment, right? And the idea is always to bring technical and operational role models as well. The lack of clear, accessible career pathways into industry is another pipeline challenge. So all of those, they're barriers and they're challenges that girls face, and why they leave in between of their journey. So the fact is that we're losing female talent even before they reach the workplace, right? The workforce. So we need to start working at the earlier careers.
And now, Patricia, let's try to understand why is the interest of women dropping, right? So as you can see on the screen, there are 5 main challenges that women face, not only in tech, but also in the industry, obviously. But the challenge is not new, but these challenges are always here, and they are not, the solutions are not evolving as fast as the technology, unfortunately. So as you can see, all these challenges can be tackled by education. So the first one is the unconscious bias and skepticism. Not easy to solve because this is more a psychological factor, right? But with education and awareness, this could be easily solved. Then a huge topic for women is the work-life balance, the pressure coming from work, but also from family, from the society. We talk a lot also about the mental charge of women when they need to take care of family. Another big challenge is the absence of role models, but also of mentors. Speaking for myself, I wouldn't be speaking to you today if my boss was not supporting me. And my boss is a male. So the work is not only on women, but also on men. We need to remember that. Another big factor is the brother culture and exclusion. This is often depicted in the pop culture in the USA or in movies. We see the geek boys and teams, IT teams and hackers only being men. So I think companies here have a role to play and need to intentionally challenge this bro culture at work, especially in the tech field. Lastly, what we see is the barrier to leadership. And this is really a system mistake. Because as we explained earlier, the higher the hierarchy, the less female leaders. So here we need clear support for women to access and not drop when they access the leadership roles. So unfortunately, these issues are cumulative, right? And they are systemic. And as a next step, we will see why the efforts to solve these challenges are currently mostly failing.
Yeah, thank you. And you are going to see that a lot of what we're saying is intertwined, right? They come back to the discussion because indeed, it's not new. It's not something that we haven't researched about. So what I mentioned before is that we have so many initiatives, so why the gap still persists. So in the terms of efforts that fail, indeed, we do have a lot of initiatives. It's not about the lack of them, don't get me wrong, but it's the lack of impact of those initiatives. So we do focus sometimes too much on the awareness. That's great. But if we just focus on the awareness, we're only tackling the surface, right? We're not having enough structural change. And here, that was the reason why our provocation on the hiring and retention. Hiring is not the same than retention. I saw throughout my career many companies being very proud. We have 50-50 hiring, or our organization has 60-40 women. But then we're talking about the entry level. What is about the lower paychecks, right? So as Wendy said, that's exactly the point, is a continuous issue. And we're talking about women. For example, if I take the experience I had at Ernst & Young, EY, I was working with the diversity and inclusion team there to support. We knew that the women were mostly leaving when they were becoming seniors to managers, and there were several discussions about that. One can say that is indeed parenthood, but What we know from the data is that the lack of promotions, the lack of representation, exactly what Chloe just said, those were the bigger issues. And that comes to my next point about these current efforts. The systems are not designed for women. And I'm gonna give a very, very simple example. A very good friend of mine, former Vodafone and Amazon, and one of the persons who was inspiring me in my journey with diversity and inclusion. In one of the podcasts we're attending, he said, how am I going to not believe that the systems are designed for me when even the temperatures in the offices are built for men?
Oh, yes.
And I never thought about that. So we had, I'm originally Brazilian, so we had huge issues in Brazil because normally the air conditioning there are very strong. So normally the temperature was in 18 degrees or 20 degrees. So it was freezing for us. So even in our basal temperature bodies, we have differences. And this is one tiny single example. And another challenge and provocation here. So whenever people talks about meritocracy, so the systems are not meritocratic. So we cannot talk about that when we're talking about hiring and retention of women as well. It's not just fair. So with that, my solution to all of you is then what can we do, right? If the efforts are failing, if what we're doing is not creating that much impact. We would like to stress again, this is not a diversity issue. This is a market problem. We're talking about trillions in the GDP that we could be including if we had fair representation and a proportion of women in the market. This is a workforce system issue. So we need to reframe the view that we have and reframe the problem. You have a lot of things, people saying, let's empower women, let's work on the confidence of the women, let's fix the women. There is a very famous book that is, let's stop fixing the women, or let's not fix the women, something like this, because it's not about the women, it's about the whole system, right? We need to work on the systemic issue. And if the industry needs talent, our proposition is women are the solution because we're being kept outside of the markets. And I'm going to give you another example that happened here in Luxembourg. And the law was changed, luckily, in 2023. So we had a law when expats were coming to the country, and we know that fundamentally Luxembourg is a country for expats. The spouses, they were coming on spouse work permit, or spouse permit, sorry, spouse visa. That means they were not allowed to work. They were only allowed to reside here. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we know that the vast majority of expats, they're men. So their spouses, or for not same-sex marriage, of course, but not same-sex marriage, when we're talking about women, they were staying in the market and they were not working. So I had very good friends of mine, extremely qualified, coming from the US, coming from the UK, coming from several different countries. They were not allowed to work, or they had to wait months until they got the approval from the companies, and many companies didn't want that. So luckily, Luxembourg changed the law in 2023, and now the spouses are allowed to work. But this only started by a petition that was created by one of the spouses. So how many other systemic issues like that we have that are preventing individuals to reach the market? So again, is it the hiring the problem, or we have other structural problems to tackle? And
What a nonsense, right?
yeah.
We read everywhere that we have a huge talent shortage in Luxembourg, and some people were not allowed to work. Okay, so let's move forward and try to identify some potential solutions, starting with how to build skills pathways, right? And we can see that Luxembourg is really investing a lot in skills development. I feel like it's a priority of the government. We can see the development of the lifelong learning program. At the House of Training as well, they developed like new programs in cybersecurity, like DORA certifications, IT security officer program. So these programs give some visibility and comfort in skills, and it also allows some people and some women to change careers. So it's not only about trainings, but also about early exposure of girls and a woman, and hands-on experience, because we know for a fact that the industry is valuing not the practice over the theory. Sorry. So as you can see on the slide, what are good examples of skilled pathways development are the development of industry and cybersec programs, creating opportunities like job opportunities, but also opportunities of speaking like today, developing role models, and developing the early exposures to technical and industrial careers, be it at school or during dedicated events, attracting professionals, young professionals, but also students and young girls. And so, Patricia, I hand over the floor to you.
Thank you, Chloe. And this is going to be pretty much the same, but now we're splitting the presentation in the skills pipeline parts that we wanted to bring to you. Now this is the entry into the industry, and the last part is going to be the retention. So the barriers to entry is already explored here before. We're talking about hiring filters. What do you mean about that? We know that many recruitment processes are unfortunately extremely biased. So there was a huge issue with Amazon recently that the AI was filtering out curriculums of women. We know about the degree biases, and we're going to explore that a bit later. What we're talking about this, why we're talking about this, and the access to first job. What do we mean here? Many of the women are career changers, as I said. And for example, they're just trying to get an opportunity. And then the market comes and say, but you're too experienced for this position. We don't need somebody with this age and your profile. So the access to this first opportunity, it's not so easy, right? So those are some of the barriers that we mentioned before as well. And we're going to repeat the entry solutions. So we need skills-based hiring. What do I mean about what do we mean about that? Focus on the skills. So no photos, no pictures. Even that part is very difficult, but there is a person in Canada, he's a connection of mine. He did his PhD on unconscious bias on recruitment, on hiring, and they created 1,500 fake profiles, some with white names or white indicated names, brown names, Latin X names, and black names. And already in the entry to the interviews, the curriculums that had white suggested names, they were more invited to the interviews than the other ones. So we need a skills-based hiring. As I said, meritocracy is utopia. So let's focus on KPIs and data. And I have heard many times, even from former bosses saying, but we don't find women's profiles. Inclusion is, we need to be intentional about inclusion. So ask the recruiters. They should be giving you profiles of women. It's going to cost more time, yes, it's going or diverse candidates in general, but we need to be intentional if you want to change things. Offer apprenticeships. So one of the points I mentioned before about the challenges was the entry jobs or the access to this first job opportunity or to career changers. Offer apprenticeships. One of the projects I'm very proud of that I conducted was a robotics rookies. I did a 5-month programs for girls between 11 to 18 years old. And I just spoke with several organizations and institutions to offer them traineeships, like 3-week summer trainees. It didn't need to be complicated. They were 15, 16 young girls, but they needed to be exposed to the market, to the possibilities they had. And this works the same if we're talking about career changers or young professionals. And partnerships. It's very important for the industry, for example, for your organizations to partner with organizations like Women for Cyber or Women in Tech or Women in Business. There are so many of us that can even support you or work together. For example, we are currently discussing now with the University of Luxembourg to have projects to train girls on cybersecurity. So partnerships, I am a fan of partnerships. I think my last name should be partners person. I believe that's the way we evolve the world and we can move further. So with that, that's also, we were asking you about hiring and retention, or hiring versus retention. We know that there is a high attrition of women before mid-career, and I'll try to speed up because some of you may have questions as well. And why is this happening? So there is a lack of career progression and visibility. There is a workplace culture and inclusion barriers, like Chloe mentioned. The bro culture is one of them. Work-life balance constraints in industrial roles. So, for example, lack of flexibility. We know this is extremely important for caregivers, regardless of the gender, but normally, unfortunately, it impacts more women. And limited access to leadership opportunities. So, when we're talking about promotions, we have again the biases. If we have more manager men, if we have more leader men, and this is part of us as humans. So if you say I don't have unconscious bias, you are not alive, because this is the way our brain works. This is neuroscience. We need to have biases to survive. The problem is when we have unconscious biases and they are jeopardizing the sorry, I need to speed up. um, they are jeopardizing our growth, right? So the biggest loss of talent is happening, it's happening after we are hiring people. And with that, we talk about solutions. So about the work-life balance, offer flexibility working hours. Many organizations do that, but they're not practicing that. Career progression, have KPIs. Without measurable metrics, there is no change. Pay transparency. There is this big, finally, EU directive about the pay transparency now coming to place. We know it's inspired by the EU, the UK Pay Transparency Act, and we know that in the UK things evolved quite a lot. So please, even if your company, if you have less than 250 employees and you're not affected to it, work on it, because it's extremely important. We know that women are being paid less than men, and then they ended up leaving the career. And sponsorship, mentorship, and coaching, they're extremely important for especially diverse candidates within the organization. One of the things, just before giving the floor to you, Chloe, I'm extremely vocal about are the manuals. For example, with small things we can do. If you see organizations that are having, for example, panels with only men, be vocal about it. Do a boycott. Say, why only men? Why I'm not being represented? Or if you are in a room that you are alone, having sponsors, or if you are on the panel and you see that you only have men, say, I would like to offer the place to my peer, to a woman. So give the place at the table for those that don't have that much opportunity so far. So, and what are we doing, Chloe?
Yeah, thank you. So actually, Patricia, this is where Women for Cyber is coming into play, because as a partnership, like you like them, as a retention solution, Women for Cyber can be seen as a partner um, for companies to provide some solutions and some mentorship to women. So actually, what do we do? Although the focus is on cybersecurity, like Patricia said, there are many initiatives in Luxembourg. So Women for Cyber is actually just one of them. But what do we provide, you may think? So we are 6 board members, and we also have 6 advisory board members, and we provide different opportunities like a mentorship program. Currently, we have approximately 20 mentors in this cohort. We also are developing networking events to provide some visibility in a confidential space, because it's usually a limited amount of people. So women can feel free to share some comments about the workplace, but also seek for advice. We also are working on a scholarship program, and in 2024, Women for Cyber Luxembourg supported the 3 scholarships with a partnership with the BPI Foundation Alphonse Verker, and one in 2025. We luckily also have 10 corporate partners. I'm happy that my firm is a corporate partner to Women for Cyber Luxembourg. and they support our visibility. We also have youth ambassador program, which is acting as a link between the education and the young people between usually 18 to 26 years old to inspire them to join the industry. So if you are interested in this kind of opportunity or want to talk about it around you, feel free to check our website and you can also join and sponsor us. So you can see that all these tools are actually supporting women and the initiatives. But we are also developing a sort of action plan that should raise your attention, because I think that's something that you can actually implement, and we'll share the slides afterwards so you can have a closer look to this one. Because I think for industry leaders, this immediate action plan is quite helpful and easy to implement. If you follow the steps that we have here, we have an immediate plan, a mid-term plan, and a long-term plan. Usually, board of directors love that. But in the short term, what you can start thinking about is checking what is the workforce about. So it's like auditing your current workforce, the number of men versus women. How about the skills? Do we provide same trainings opportunities to each staff members depending on seniority, depending also on the gender? And review the job descriptions. Job descriptions, I think, are often overlooked, but I think they are very important. So everybody is aware of his duties, career path, and training program. It's also a good way to have a support to discuss with the leaders. It's also interesting to identify the hiring barriers. And lastly, as Patricia introduced, we will have a game changer soon with the pay transparency review. So this will be truly a huge change because soon most companies will have to publish the pay gaps and the pay gaps between men and women. So let's see the impact. Actually, I'm quite curious to see in a few years what will be the impact, especially in Luxembourg. I know in Luxembourg, the pay gap between men and women is better than in some EU countries, but still there's room for improvement. You'll see that we also developed a mid-term plan, like developing a mentorship program. And here we can also partner with Women for Cyber and developing a skilled base hiring. Lastly, a more long-term plan can be implemented with more policies and structures. So moving on, because I see time is running out. What must organizations do? I think we provided some tips, but what we need is a mindset shift. We need to rethink about the whole HR, not only about the hiring, but it should also be an HR constant exercise to constantly review the workforce and see where the company stands. My question to you is, are you hiring based on a checklist? Maybe we should change the way this is done. And with Patricia, we were wondering if you have a CEO in mind that you admire, because actually most of the big names in this world and CEOs of huge companies and fortunes companies actually do not have MBA or nice university degree, and still they are very successful. So I think this is good food for thought. And lastly, we would like to call for an action because we think that the time to act is now. And so the talent gap will not be solved by itself. So we need action because women are unrepresented, and we think that the change is now because the technology is evolving fast and we need to adapt. So actions must be an intentional and measurable fact. So what do you think you can change in the next 30 days to improve your metrics internally? We would be quite curious um, to know. Well, thank you, everybody. So we are reaching the end of our presentation. Maybe we can take a few minutes to chat in the comment box. And in case you would like to reach out, you have our contact details. We have a website, LinkedIn, and you can also email us. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. And we hope you found our presentation useful.
Thank you so much, Patricia and Chloe. Very interesting talk, an eye opener, a lot of information. Thank you. And we have a question from Laurence. I will read it to you and we can talk about it. So Laurence Henry is saying about the talent shortage. I believe recruiters are looking for low-cost cybersecurity specialists to be competitive versus Asian banks. What is the average income for a man from the Grand Duchy versus a woman from Philippines?
Sorry, I was puzzled with the dash. Um, it's of course very different, and not just in terms of gender. If we take the average salary, I think in Luxembourg is 80,000 from what I saw recently, which is of course average, so is extremely high. We know there is a high impact also from the public sector salaries. But we can also say what is the average income from a woman in the Grand Duchy versus a man in the Philippines. However, that answer, in my perspective, this would be very superficial to analyze, Laurence, because if we take the market for itself, right, regardless of cybersecurity, this is a problem that we have across Europe and in the US. But then it was just even an article from the Luxembourg Times of today that if we take the financial sector, the banks in Europe, for example, in terms of C-level, they are much behind than the UK or the US. So the salaries are comparative, right, or comparable. And even in the US, we can say that the salaries are higher. So that would not just be the answer. Or we could think, for example, why do we have so many women graduating the STEM fields in India? I had already several discussions like that with friends of mine from India, because there they train the population to go to the STEM fields. It's not even a question for them when for the children. Everybody should go into the STEM fields. So when you remove the question from the table to say that this is a men's curriculum or this is a girl's topic and this is a boy's topic, it changes a lot. There is a research that has been conducted by BBC. There is a video, a very interesting video about it. They took volunteers to work with two babies, to play with two babies. One baby boy, they dressed in pink, and one baby girl, they dressed in blue. And they brought those two babies into a playroom, so to say, with several gender toys, what we could say that are toys for boys and for girls, wrongly. And they asked those individuals to play with those children without knowing their genders. And in the end of this, the every play time of each one of the volunteers, they asked, why have you played with the baby in blue with cars or spaceships, and with the baby in pink with kitchen appliances and plush toys and so on? They said, because this is a girl and the girl wants that. And it was the opposite. So it was our biases on the colors. And what do you think the babies want? What we know from the science is that when we give babies or children just one set of toys to play with, for example, plush toys or dolls, you are developing their emotions, but you are not developing their cognitive skills, the spatial skills. For example, if you give them construction tools or cars or trucks, and the other way is also true for the boys. We're removing the boys the capacity to handle their own emotions because we are preventing them from playing with dolls and plush toys and so on. So that's why the problem is way much further than that, much earlier than just simply comparing the salaries. But I don't know, Chloe, if you have any thoughts.
Yes, I also there was a study in France that toys in pink, so for little girls, were more pricey than toys for little boys. Same with hygiene stuff. They are usually higher and more pricey for women rather than for men. So if you buy, I don't know, a razor, for instance, if it's blue, it will be less pricey than a pink one for women. So yeah.
Thank you. Very interesting intervention, both of you. And thanks everyone for participating in this webinar. Just to close this, feel free to check the next events of the DIH by scanning this QR code. And I wish everyone a great morning. Thank you again, Chloe and Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.